Hey, friend, welcome to Fear into Faith. This is our Miracles, Signs, and Wonders edition. Oh man, I am so excited to have you with us today. I'm your host, Summer Day, and with me in the studio today is a pretty special guy. Now, he's got an incredible story of how he got taken to the hospital, paralyzed from the neck down, and walked out. That's an incredible story. But what makes me even more excited is because I happen to know this man, this myth, this legend. Would you help me welcome to our Fear into Faith TV show, my own father, Mr. Timothy Curtis?
Thank you, Summer. You're the good kid.
That's awesome. But if we're being honest, you usually say you're the good son.
Oh, that's right. She's one girl out of six children. The
Yep.
rest are all five boys, sticky, gummy little boys. But Summer, she runs right over the top of them.
Thank you. I received that. That's the running joke in our family. You're the good son. I am. I'm the best one out of all of them. And they can come on my TV show if they'd like to debate that. So
Thank
anyway,
you.
this is my dad, Tim. And I was just telling him that I am so excited to share you with the world because you are just one of my heroes, one of my favorite absolute people on the planet. So much of who I am and what I have done in my life is because of your constant encouragement, your belief in me, our hours upon hours of just wise philosophical biblical discussions that we've had, so many things, and I'm just grateful to have you here.
I'm glad
Okay.
to be here.
We can pretend like we don't know you really quick. Where are you from?
From Torrance, California.
Hey, no way, me too. And you're retired now. What did you used to do?
I used to be a roofing contractor. That's just a painter with his brains kicked out.
Nice. Awesome. I love it. Well, a lot of times I'll talk about a bunch of other things before we get into the story. I kind of want to really get into your story right away because I
Yeah.
feel like we probably will just talk about life and share all kinds of wisdom afterwards. So let's chat about this incredible story that happened to you. Do you remember how many years ago it was?
That would have been September of 2010.
September of 2010. All right, and take us back to that day, September 2010. What were you doing that day?
Well, I just picked up a brand new surfboard, one that I had ordered that was just absolutely beautiful. And so I put it in my truck and I drove to the beach, and there he was on the bluff, the cliff above, looking down at the waves. And I noticed that the waves had a certain shape that we call a shore pound. And I thought, I'm not going to take my new board out there and have a wave slam it into the sand and break it. So I left the board in the truck and I walked down to the beach and I thought, well, I'll just do a little body surfing. And so I went out among the waves and I caught some really nice little waves.
Okay, yeah, I get to pause you really quick since I'm actually part of this story and I remember it. It was the day of a party at my brother Ben's house, and you had shown up early, and because you were so early, you're like, "Well, I'm just gonna go hit some waves then."
Yeah.
Because I remember when I got to the party, I said, "Oh, I thought Dad was here," and he was like, "Oh yeah, he was super early, so he just decided to go surfing." I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course Dad went surfing. Not a big deal because you surfed your whole life." All right, back to the story. The waves are awesome.
So I'm in the water and I'm catching a few waves, and then I see an outsider coming, and I thought, okay, that's going to be the wave of the day. So I swam out and caught this wave. It wasn't that big, but it gets bigger the older I. And now it's 20 feet high. No, I'm just kidding.
The older you get, the bigger the wave was.
Yeah.
Love it.
No, it was just an average wave, and I picked it up and got myself just right, pulled my arms down to my side so that the wave could take me in. And I was just at that point where I expected my head to pop out in front of the wave so I could
And
see
you were
where I
very
was.
experienced. I want people to know, like, you've been doing this like 50 plus years, your whole
Yeah.
life, caught millions of waves. It's not like you didn't know what you were doing at all.
It's more like 60 years, or no, 65 years when I started surfing. But
Wow.
anyway, I caught this wave and I was expecting to go straight to the beach. or, make my way toward the sand. But this wave picked me up. And as I thought I was going straight horizontally toward the beach, I was actually going straight down, straight like an arrow. And this wave, being a shore pounder, it took me and drove me straight down into bare sand. It was wet, but no water on it. And I hit the top of my head on that hard sand, and it got my attention. But I noticed immediately that I had no feeling from the neck down. And so had all of these thoughts go through my mind before I even floated to the surface. I pictured, let's see, what's his first name? Christopher Reeve, that played Superman. And of
Oh,
course, in
yeah.
his horse accident, he was paralyzed from the neck down. And I pictured myself right away being like Christopher Reeve. And I thought to myself, I'm going to get the best electric wheelchair that I can find so that I can zoom along the sidewalk. And
And
then,
you would have.
really, even before I got to the surface, I thought, being paralyzed from the neck down, I can still visit colleges. I can give speeches about
Yeah.
body surfing and water safety in the waves, and maybe help somebody else to avoid what just now happened to me.
Wow.
Well, what was really interesting, all of this before I came to the surface, but when I came to the surface, I had that natural instinct to lift my head and take a breath. But immediately I noticed I couldn't lift my head. I couldn't move my nose a quarter inch left or right.
Wow.
Nothing. And I
Wow.
laid there in the water for what seemed like quite a while. And then I thought, now this is nuts. You probably think I lost my mind, but I thought, I've never held my breath this long before. Oh, I wish I could have timed this.
The
Yeah.
things people go through when they're like gonna die.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm holding my breath. I'm at the surface and I'm thinking, gosh, did anybody see me? Is anybody going to come and help me out of the water?
Yeah.
Well, the good news is I could feel somebody bumping into me, but they weren't doing anything to help me. I couldn't tell if they had grabbed my arms or anything because I couldn't feel that. But I wasn't feeling like somebody was dragging me out. I had my eyes open, I could see in the water, but I didn't see anything moving. And so I thought, why are they just standing there?
Hmm.
But then I began to notice that what was bumping me in the head was not a person, it was my own arm.
Oh my
The
gosh.
movement of the swell of the ocean was moving it and hitting me. And
Oh
then I
wow.
realized I'm alone. And so it really
And
seemed,
don't they say don't ever go body surfing or surfing alone? Isn't that a thing? If not, you better start teaching the world about that.
well, the message I have is don't go body surfing in a shore pound.
Yeah, or alone, like, ever. This is about to get really good, but we're gonna take a break really quick, my friends, and we'll be right back after this. You have all the power within you to say no to fear. The world can't wait. We don't have time. We don't have time. We don't have time. You are not going to leave here in fear. Fear gets to go in Jesus' name. Welcome back, my friend. All right, we're in the middle of the ocean right now with the one and only my dad, Mr. Tim Curtis, who is sharing his story of body surfing and a wave pounding him into the sand. He's absolutely paralyzed, can't move anything, can't even turn his head left or right. Thought somebody was there to help him, realized it was his own arm actually hitting him in the head. So there you are, face down in the water, not knowing what's next. And then what happened?
Well, the thing that was amazing is I could feel it hitting the side of my head just gently, but I couldn't feel it in my hand
Hmm.
because of the paralysis.
Yeah.
So I laid there and just thought to myself, well, it looks like I'm going to drown. And I accepted that. But what was really amazing, I felt no panic whatsoever.
Yes.
And somebody could say, well, you were in shock. I was not in shock
Mhm.
at all. I had all my senses. I felt fine. Nothing hurt really. uh, and so I didn't even realize how hard I hit and didn't know what it did to me until I saw all the bruises and so on
Yeah.
from the pictures of when I was laying in the hospital. But I don't know what happened next at that moment, whether I blacked out from holding my breath too long. But what I remember next is I'm hearing someone say, on the count of three, move him 2 feet and then set him down. And
Wasn't
so
there
I'm
one more
hearing,
part before that? Wasn't there, I thought I remember you saying, like, just before you're like, "I am now gonna drown," a wave rolled you over just enough to catch, like, a breath real quick?
oh, that's right.
You said
Yes,
that happened about 4 or 5 times. Actually, every time you're like, "I'm gonna die," a wave would roll you just to get a breath.
exactly. Yes, I forgot that part. And that's what kept me going. But what the fascinating part was I couldn't see anyone because I couldn't lift my face unless the wave would roll me. I had no control whatsoever. But then I hear somebody saying repeatedly, 1, 2, 3, 2 feet, again, again. And so they got me out of the wave line and across the wet sand and up to dry sand. And the comical part was they laid me down in the sand, face first, in the sand. I'm,
You're
I
like, "Now I'm gonna drown in the sand."
bless their hearts. But anyway, so I'm trying to yell through the sand, and I said, I can't breathe. Then somebody moved the sand away, and so on. And so, what happened next? By the time that the emergency personnel arrived, there was a lifeguard truck that came across the sand. There was one of those big red boxy looking um, oh fire station ambulances up on the what we call the I guess the strand or the sidewalk that runs along the beach. And so what they had to do is they put a board on my back first, and then I don't know how they got the one under me, but they did. So I'm sandwiched between two boards, and then on the count of three, they lift me over. And so now
Wow.
I can see people. I can see the lifeguard. I can see the emergency personnel and bystanders who wanted to see what was going on. And so they carried me across the sand to the red big
Mhm.
fire truck ambulance thing, and they put me in the back of that. And then, of course, the sirens are going, and we're on our way to the hospital. And I noticed that we're going quite a long ways. And I said, are we going to Torrance Memorial, which is the closest hospital to where this happened? And they said, no, there is no one qualified at Torrance Memorial to take care of your particular injuries. We're going to take you all the way to Harbor City. It's Harbor General, I think they call it. It's an extension of UCLA. And that's where the experts are. And so they,
Wow. Did
yeah,
that instill a little bit of fear in you? Did you kinda start going, "Oh, this might be really
no,
bad"?
there
No.
was never a time of fear.
That's because 'cause you're my dad. Everybody knows I'm a fear crusher. I learned it from my dad.
Well, Summer, I wasn't alone. I knew this in the water. I knew that the Lord was with me. I could feel
Amen.
his spirit of comfort
Mhm.
eh, encouraging me to not panic. I
Love it.
had no fear, no panic, no
Yes.
anything. And even on the way to the hospital in this ambulance, the only thing that was disturbing to me is this thing didn't have very good suspension. And my head is strapped to this
Oh,
board.
no.
And every little bump, I'm just feeling my brain scramble.
Yeah.
But no,
So They took you to the hospital, and I know this is where I come into the story because I don't remember which
Well,
one
let
of us.
me tell you before you got there.
Okay, go ahead.
They brought me in and put me on a gurney, and I'm seeing all of these people surrounding me, and they pulled out a pair of scissors, and that's when the tragedy hit. This is where I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable about this experience. They cut off my favorite swimsuit. It was permanently cut in half.
You're so drama.
So this was my favorite.
Your
So
favorite swimsuit.
it was
Okay. So then you're at the hospital, and I know one of us at the party got a call, and I was told your dad has had an accident and he's paralyzed from the neck down and he's at the hospital. And of course, I jumped in a car and raced over there. I'm actually shocked thinking about it now. How come all the other siblings didn't go? That's probably why I'm the favorite son, just saying. And raced over there, and you were calm the whole time. And I remember talking to the doctors and hearing that you were paralyzed from the neck down. And I never freaked out either. I never cried either. I think that that peace of God that you're talking about was definitely there. I remember Kelly was also there. And I remember coming into talking to you. And I remember praying for you and praying outside of the room and just being like, okay, Lord, what are you going to do about this? I didn't feel like it was going to be permanent at all. And I don't think it was being in shock. I've been in shock many, many times. I feel like I literally was like, yeah, no, I don't, I don't think this is dad's diagnosis. I don't think this is correct. What do you remember next after that?
well, I do remember that over time, it seemed like I started to feel things maybe in my fingers. And one of the physician's assistants came in and said, I want you to move the toes on your right foot. Well, I couldn't feel anything, but I tried, and of course, nothing. And then he said, okay, move the toes on your left foot. And I said, now, wait a minute. Did my toes move on my right foot? And he says, yeah. And that was maybe the first time I thought, gosh, uh, maybe something is still connected, because I thought
Mm,
for sure I had severed my spinal cord.
yeah.
And then he said left toes, and those moved too. And so over time, as the hours went by, I began to notice sensation
Hmm.
and even pain, and I welcomed the pain.
Hmm.
That spoke to me positive possibilities.
Yeah.
And so as time went on and people came to visit,
Ooh, as time went on, that's a great part for us to go ahead and pause, leave you all on a cliffhanger, and we'll come back right after this.
Darkness has never seemed so thick, but we believe there has never been a generation more ready for change, for hope, for truth, for real love. Jesus in us will shape the culture around us. Jesus in us will transform nations. Wherever you are, you can be the change you want to see. The change starts with you.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, my friend. We are in the middle of Tim Curtis's story, also known as my amazing dad, who had a body surfing accident, paralyzed, absolutely could not move. And we're at the part now where he's in the hospital and he didn't even realize that his right toe started moving, then his left toe started moving. Then he actually started to have feeling come back in his body and started to feel pain, which you welcomed. And what do you remember next?
well, as the time went on, I thought, that I started to feel better. I didn't feel like, jumping hurdles or anything. But I began to think, do I want to stay overnight here, or do I actually want to go home? And so I told whoever was there,
Mhm.
I'm going home. And then all of a sudden, these personnel come in and say, if you go home, you might die on the way. And I said, well, I'd rather die on the way home than die here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
so,
remember all of them being in shock that you stood up. I remember all of them being in shock that you were gonna leave, and I remember trying to get you to use a wheelchair even. I was like, "Dad, don't walk out of the hospital, like, at least use a wheelchair," and you're like, "I'm fine." I'm like, "Then I'm holding your arm." And I do remember I was crying on the way out. Like I had tears streaming down my face about you. I'm getting emotional right now about you walking out of the hospital. So I do think at that moment it did hit me a little bit how crazy it actually was that
Yeah.
you walked out of the hospital, because nobody who worked there said that you were going to walk out of that hospital. They were
Well,
all just kind of assessing the situation. Okay, I think we should get to the other that was a miracle you walked out, but there's another miracle that was really crazy, and it happened I think within a couple of weeks, cuz they sent you to an orthopedic surgeon
yeah.
to check on everything, and I went with you to this orthopedic surgeon that had your x-rays and everything, and this is part like I'll never forget. This is where we know God's hand was on you for sure through all of this. What do you remember about that day?
Well, I had to go get an MRI before we went to see the orthopedic surgeon. And remember now, this fellow's all the way up in Santa Monica, the other
Yeah,
side of, yeah, way up there.
it was like an hour away.
Yes, because he was top of the line. They
Mhm.
wanted me to be
Yeah,
seen
he
by
was one of the
the
number 1 orthopedic surgeons in the whole country.
yeah,
Yep.
he had the
Been
credentials.
doing it for like 30 years.
So I get there. Well, Summer took me, and we brought the MRI, and then this marvelous physician puts it up on the back light, the screen, so you can see through everything. And he started asking me some questions. He says, "Can you pee?" I said, "Of course." He says, "Well, look at this right here. What's happened to your spinal cord says that you're not able to pee. In fact, you're not able to stand up, but here you are standing up."
Yeah, and then he said all these things, in fact, you should be dead.
Oh, yes.
I remember him being in absolute shock, and he showed that because you had had a previous injury as a roofer, you had fallen off a roof and you had a bone shard. And he said, "Do you see this little thing right here? This is a bone shard, and it's actually pressed against your spinal column. And there is no way at all that any possible injury you had in the ocean would not have caused that to go through your spinal cord like butter." He said 100%, even a small amount of force would have severed your spinal cord. But the amount of force that you took, there's no way. And he said, in 30 years that I've been doing this, however many years he's been doing it, he said, "I've never seen anything like this. All I know is someone kept you alive for a reason." And I don't even know if he believed in God, but he was like, "You should not be alive. You should not be able to pee, eat food, breathe, or anything, because you should not even be alive."
Yeah. I think if I remember right, it was either that visit or the next one where he said, "I've only seen an MRI like this on another one, but it was a cadaver."
Hmm.
My MRI, in his estimation, was just so clear that what had happened to my spine,
Mm-hmm.
the person should not be alive. And so
Yeah.
he's never seen that on another living person.
Yep. Yep.
And yes, the MRI shows
Yeah.
my spinal cord going down in a Z pattern with
Yep.
all this crooked
A
vertebrae.
1000%. It was that bone chart. And he's like, I was like butter? He goes, "Yeah, very little force. Like the tiniest bit of force should have just severed that. The amount of weight and force that it would take for the ocean to slam you down and all of the different things." I think I remember him asking something like, "What are you going to do next with your life? Like you clearly were saved for a reason, and what's that going to look like for you?" And so I'm so glad that you could put this story in here, because it's a miracle that I watched. I watched a miracle of you leaving the hospital. At the time, I wasn't quite the prayer warrior I am now. Now I would have been like, "I'm anointing you. I'm calling this out in Jesus' name. We're no wheelchair for you," But now it's like making me go back and look in my faith of just like, God really is there. He's really there. And you felt his peace in the ocean, and I felt his peace in the hospital. And it never left. Like you never cried. You were never upset. I mean, it
No,
was really beautiful, the presence of God throughout the whole experience, and felt the presence of God when that orthopedic surgeon was like, "Somebody kept you here for a reason." So for those of you watching that you've ever felt like, something happened and it wasn't my time or it wasn't that person's time, I really believe that there's some God ordained and appointed things that God kept you around for sure. I thought personally it was for me, because I want you to be around for a while. How How has I mean, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody, which is how has this shaped or grown your faith, or how did it change you? Um, and the funny thing is, you have a lot of stories like this. You have so many near death experience stories. You have so many miraculous stories. You have stories of being set free, delivered, power of God. So many. But for this particular one, hearing from that doctor, God kept you around for a reason. Somebody upstairs wanted you alive. Did that shift anything for you?
Well, it did help me to feel that we, as people on this planet, that we all need each other. And I thought, if there is something that I have that's of value to others, I'm going to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to reduce myself down to a grease spot, or, spend the rest of my life thinking about all the things that I wish I had not done in
Yeah.
my life, but step up. And so that's why I wrote the book.
I was gonna say, that's when you wrote your book, huh? It was kind of
Yeah.
the kick in the pants you needed to write your book, which
Yeah.
I love. I know it was called The Power of Possibilities, but I think you
It's,
changed the title,
it's called
or The Law of Possibility.
Your Personal Possibilities.
Your Personal Possibilities. Is it
Yeah,
on Amazon so people can grab it?
I think so. Yes.
All right. Well, if you look up Tim Curtis, it was formerly called The Law of Possibilities, now called Your Personal Possibilities. I highly, highly recommend it. A lot of you know that I'm a coach, a success coach, a relationship coach, and I'm going to tell you a lot of stuff that I coach and teach. I learned from my dad, and there's even things in his book that I've read and said, "Hey, can I tweak this to fit?" Women my age, my demographics, can we tweak this and can I reteach it in a different way? And he's absolutely blessed me with that. But this is a golden book, y'all. My dad has overcomer story after overcomer story after overcomer story, and is just one of my inspirations on personal development. And it's a great read. And my dad's really funny, if you haven't noticed. So it's not a dry read. It's funny, it's humorous, and he uses stories really well to anchor in concepts and stuff like that. So grab a copy of that. We have 1 minute left. What would you want to say just for people that were watching and maybe they haven't had an interactive experience with God and they might be skeptical that God really is around all the time? What would you say to them?
I feel that the main message that I have to share it goes along with what you were saying earlier. Don't focus so much on your weaknesses. Focus on your strengths. Focus on your value as a human being. Because what it did for me when I wrote the book, I came close to departing again in 2017 when I had metastatic melanoma traveling through my body, giant tumor, operations, chemo, the whole business. And I was under the impression from interview with two oncologists at the same time that I had 2 months to live. I misunderstood what they were saying. They said, if we don't do anything, you've got
Got it.
2 months.
So what's your wrap up final message from all of you?
Okay. Just be mindful of yourself and other people and give what you have so that when your time comes to step through that looking glass into the next life, you can go feeling good about yourself.
Yeah. So awesome. I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's great. Don't wait like my dad to have something happen where God basically says, hey, it's not your time yet. I've got an assignment for you to write that book or to do that speech or to become that coach or that author or whatever it is for you. I want you to learn from my dad today that life can be precious and it can be short. And sometimes you might have a little bit more time and sometimes you don't. I pray that you would ask God today, Father, what is it you want from me? Before I depart, before I go through those gates, what is it that you want from me to leave behind as my legacy? I'm so grateful for my dad for leaving behind that book. I'm grateful for you being here. Thanks for being a part of my book and being a part of our TV show. I appreciate you. I love you.
Thank you, Summer.
We'll see you next time, friends. Thanks for watching.